Hi friends, my name's Trish Roberts and you're watching Faint Signals from Vega. I realize this is probably very early on the East Coast of the United States, this vegan live stream. I've had some extra time to do some vegan live streams, so I thought I'd take this opportunity. So even though it's one after the other in the last couple of days, I thought it was good to do that. And yesterday in my live stream, somebody mentioned that they eat honey. And a lot of people don't think that that's problematic. Hi, Jenna. And you're up very early. And a lot of people don't think it's very problematic. And but eating honey is it is problematic, and there's actually a lot of death involved. And excuse me, somebody's suggesting I turn up my mic. Yes? So anyway, my mic's gone right down for some reason. There you go. That's better. Hi, from the Philippines. Well, that's excellent. Okay, well, I didn't expect anybody to be here, so that's nice. So I'm just going to share with you some information about honey. People think that, there isn't any killing or any devastation involved in the production of honey, and that includes organic production, but there certainly is. And not only that, but it's actually weakening many hives, many honeybees and their hives. Anyway, I'll read this, and so you'll understand what I'm talking about. This explains it. Oh, hello from Sweden. That's nice. So hello back. So hold on a sec. I'm just checking some. Okay. All right. So I'll read this now, and we'll and then I'll actually share a lovely poem that's a 1,000-year-old poem by a Syrian poet, and I think that you'll enjoy it. It's actually a vegan poem from 1,000 years ago. Anyway, this one is called 3 Reasons Not to Eat Honey. And I dedicate this to all the wild bees who are sort of suffering, and to the honeybees that are suffering too, the European bees. Okay, so from the basil plant, a strong hum sounds, soft wings vibrate the air, endlessly scratching for nectar. To truly watch these amazing animals plunder and absent-mindedly pollinate these tiny white flowers makes one wonder how such a small animal could make such a large difference in our lives. Yet without the humble bee, the food on your table, the flowers in your garden, the clothes on your back might just disappear. Bees pollinate approximately 75% of all fruit, vegetable, and seed crops in the US. We may be able to spray noxious fertilizers and pesticides on plants to, quote, rid, end quote, ourselves of some problems and create new ones. But we have to create a chemical that can successfully pollinate large crops. Nonetheless, we have still created an agricultural system that is in danger of killing one of its strongest contributors in the pursuit of easy pollination and honey. And it has a little note here. Although there are numerous species of bees that pollinate flowers, crops, this job has been disproportionately taken over by farmed honeybees. We've been tricked into believing that honey is simply a byproduct of the essential pollination provided by farmed honeybees. Did you know, though, that the honeybees' wild counterparts, such as bumblebees, carpenter, and digger bees, are much better pollinators? They are also less likely than farmed honeybees to be affected by mites and Africanized bees. The issue is that these native bees can hibernate for up to 11 months out of the year and do not live in large colonies. Thus, they do not produce massive amounts of honey. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United States estimates that between US 235 billion and US 577 billion worth of annual global food production relies on the direct contributions by pollinators. While you may spread a heaping tablespoon of honey on your morning toast without thinking, creating each drop is no small feat. To make 1 pound of honey, a colony will have to visit over 2 million flowers and fly over 55,000 miles at up to 15 miles per hour to do so, according to the Utah Beekeepers Association. So I'll just say that again. To make 1 pound of honey, a colony will have to visit over 2 million flowers and fly over 55,000 miles at up to 15 miles per hour to do so. So the association also informs us that during a bee's lifetime, she will only make approximately 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey, which is essential to the hive for times when nectar is scarce, such as during winter. At times, there may be an excess in the hive, but this amount is difficult to determine, and large-scale beekeepers often remove all or most of it and replace it with sugar or corn syrup substitute. So just to emphasize that again, large-scale beekeepers often remove all or most of the honey and replace it with sugar or corn syrup substitute. So just think about that for a second. Now, can you imagine someone removing all the fruit juice from your house and replacing it with fruit-flavored soda? It may still give you energy, but eventually it will probably make you sick. Another thing to think about while you sit by your beeswax candle, and contemplate the lives of these little fellows is that bees must consume approximately 8 pounds of honey to produce each pound of wax. And the more we take from them, bee pollen, royal jelly, propolis, the harder these insects must work. And the more bees are needed, which isn't good news for a population that's dwindling. When you see a jar of honey, you may think of the sweet cartoon hives depicted in childhood stories, such as Winnie the Pooh, but most hives are now confined to large boxes, a completely foreign shape to bees, that are jostled and shipped around the country to pollinate crops and produce honey. This is stressful and confusing to the bees' natural navigation systems. Along the way, bees are lost and killed and may spread diseases from one infected hive to another. The practice of bee farming often limits bees' diet to monoculture crops. Hint, hint, blueberry, clover, lavender honey, and introduces large amounts of pesticides into their systems and causes the farmed bees to crowd out native wild pollinators that may have been otherwise present. Beekeepers, even small-scale backyard beekeepers, will also kill the queens if they feel the hive is in danger of swarming, fleeing their file cabinet-shaped homes or drones that are deemed unnecessary for bee production. The drone's main function is to fertilize the queen when needed. Honey is meant as a health food for bees. The more we interfere with their natural processes, both by relying on farmed bees as pollinators rather than other native wild bees instead of insects or animals, and to feed our desires for quote-unquote sweets, the closer we are to coming to agricultural disaster. The question, this is titled The Case of the Disappearing Bees. The question of what will happen if bees disappear may not be far from being answered. Over the past couple of years, stories about bees disappearing and colony collapse disorder have been popping up in the New York Times, the Star Tribune, Huffington Post, PBS, Discovery News, and more. If nothing else wakes us up, perhaps the fact that the disappearance of bees has become front-page news will. Scientists are rushing to discover what's causing this problem before it's too late, and before we lose the important environmental link created by bees. Thus far, the use of pesticides and the bees' vulnerability to diseases are the main issues. Pennsylvania State University published a study in 2010 that found unprecedented levels, in quotes, of pesticides in honeybees and hives in the United States. If it's in the bees and hives, what do you think is in your honey? So some of these chemicals are killing bees, and guess what? The EPA knows about it. Quote, the EPA identifies two specific neonicotinoids, imidacloprid and clothianidin, as highly toxic to bees. Both chemicals cause symptoms in bees such as memory loss, navigation disruption, paralysis, and death. Both chemicals have been linked in dramatic honeybee deaths and subsequent suspension of their use in France and Germany. Several European countries have already suspended them. Last year, Slovenia and Italy also suspended their use for what they consider a significant risk to honeybee populations, end quote. This is old news. This story came out of 2009, but has anything changed here? Not as far as I can tell. So we'll talk about mites and viruses now. With weakened immune systems, stress, inferior food sources, pesticides, etc., bees have become more susceptible to viruses, fungal infections, and mites. Many of these invasive bugs are spread as hives are moved around the country or transferred from country to country. While there are a number of treatments on the market for the mites, viruses, funguses, and other pests that are attacking our colonies, none have solved the problem completely. These treatments can also introduce antibiotics, pesticides, and other chemicals into the hives in an attempt to prevent or heal infection. In these chemicals, often on strips, are not removed from the hive after they lose potency. They can in fact help the viruses or mites become resistant to treatment in the future. Pesticides and viruses aside, commercial bee farming, whether organic, whether bee deaths are fewer but still occur, or conventional, does not provide bees with the opportunity to live out their normal life cycle. No matter how small the animal, farming is farming. Whether you choose to buy backyard honey or a large brand eating honey, where are we now? I'll just start that again. Pesticides and viruses aside, commercial bee farming, whether organic, where bee deaths are fewer but still occur, or conventional, does not provide bees with the opportunity to live out their normal life cycle. No matter how small the animal, farming is farming. Whether you choose to buy backyard honey or a large brand, eating honey and using other bee products encourages using bees for profit. And it says here, still hankering for some honey? Well, the next fact might change just that. And it has here the true story of honey production. There are other insect-produced substances such as shellac and products derived from parts of insects, cochineal or carmine, that may be used in food, but these are not considered food in and of themselves. Some insects are also eaten as food, but honey remains the one product, quote, created by, end quote, insects that is actually marketed as food. This is the true story of how this, quote, healthy sweetener is produced. The bees search for a source of nectar. When they find a suitable flower, they dig in and swallow the nectar into their crop. It's like a stomach used for honey, for their honey. Not too bad so far, but wait. The bees then chew the regurgitated honey, mixing it with saliva to add enzymes. Then they swallow it again. Then they regurgitate it again. This process is repeated many, many times. If we could see this process in action, would we really want to slather this substance on our toast? While some people may shrug and say, so what? The fact is that honey is a mix of regurgitated food and spit. Let me ask you this. Is there any other food that you would willingly eat that has been swallowed, vomited, mixed with spit, rechewed, swallowed, and then regurgitated again? I don't care how sweet it is or what the health benefits are. One of my rules for life is do not eat anything that came out of another animal's stomach. The lives of bees are complex. They feel pain, they dance to communicate, and they view the world through technicolor eyes. While they may not directly offer their help to us, we should be grateful for all they do willingly and ask no more. I hope the next time you see a bee, you will watch more closely and show your appreciation for their work by planting a flower-rich garden and leaving the honey, wax, and other bee products for those winged animals that truly need them. Even the smallest of insects deserves the right to live their lives free from being part of a production line. So that's, I think that's quite an interesting, sort of an article, which is actually by gentleworld.org, who have kindly given me permission to share their blogs. And I think it's something to consider that we're actually contributing to the downfall of these particular animals who have the right to have their own food sources without our interference, but they're also helping the planet survive and helping us survive. And without bees, we're actually pretty much doomed because we need pollinators. So the last thing I wanted to leave you with, really, this isn't going to be a long live stream, really, but I wanted to share with you a poem by a Syrian poet, and I'll just tell you a little bit about him because this is from 1,000 years ago. His name is al-Ma'ari, whose full name is Abdallah al-Mari. That's probably not a very good pronunciation of an Arabic name. He was a blind Syrian Arab philosopher, poet, and writer. He was stricken with smallpox when he was 4, and this eventually led to his total blindness. He started his career as a poet at an early age of around 11 or 12 years old, and he was educated in Aleppo, and he later also in Antioch and other Syrian cities. And he spent 2 years in Baghdad, where he was well received in literary salons at the time, but he opted for an ascetic lifestyle, refusing to sell his poems, living in seclusion and observing a strict diet. But he had great respect, and I wanted to share this poem. I mean, this is 1,000 years old and really, really something that we could all take heed of. It's titled, I No Longer Steal from Nature. You are diseased in understanding and religion. Come to me that you may hear something of sound truth. Do not unjustly eat fish the water has given up, and do not desire as food the flesh of slaughtered animals, or the white milk of mothers who intended its pure draught for their young, not noble ladies. And do not grieve the unsuspecting birds by taking eggs, for injustice is the worst of crimes. And spare the honey which bees get industriously from the flowers of fragrant plants, for they did not store it that it might belong to others, nor did they gather it for bounty and gifts. I wash my hands of all of this and wish that I perceived my way before my hair went grey. So that's al-Ma'ari, 973 to 1057. So I think that's quite a beautiful poem, and he was really ahead of his time. So anyway, that's really all I wanted to say. I could have a look through the comment section, and I may do that. I'm going to do a frequently asked questions and comments, addressing comments soon, and I'm sure that there'll be some in here that I'll probably address. So anyway, my name's Trish Roberts. Thanks so much for watching. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Oh, and by the way, here's my vegan podcast, howtogovegan.org. It has a lot about ethics, which is how we will remain vegan if we internalize the ethical position, which is what veganism is. It's not a diet. It's an ethical position. It's an ethical position which rejects using sentient animals as property, as resources, as things. So whatever you've heard about veganism in the mainstream corporate media or even from large animal organizations, it's probably wrong. It's often conflated with vegetarianism. It's often presented as a diet. It's often presented as daunting or elitist or whatever. It's usually vilified and lots of pejorative things said about it, even from large animal organizations, because they have donations. They need to get donations, and they don't want to challenge their non-vegan donor base. So you've probably heard a lot of propaganda and a lot of misinformation and disinformation about veganism, but it's really not difficult at all to be vegan. It's one of the best decisions you'll probably make in your life. It's better for us. It's better for other animals, of course. They're the main purpose for being vegan, but it's also much better for the planet. As you can see, honey production is not doing any favors for anybody, including honeybees and including wild bees. It's not doing the environment any good whatsoever. And 51% of greenhouse gases are from animal agriculture. So that's actually destroying the planet. So animal product consumption is problematic on so many levels. And if you watch Cowspiracy, you'll find out how problematic it is. Cowspiracy, the sustainability secret. But I invite you to check out howtogovegan.org, which is a comprehensive vegan podcast that I made a year ago, and it has lots and lots of information on it. You can listen to it when you're on a treadmill or going for a walk, whenever it's convenient. And really, it's a growing movement. It's exponentially growing, the vegan movement. It's one of the greatest social justice movements of the 21st century. It's not some fringe philosophy. It's nothing. It's about nonviolence and justice. And when people get upset, some people, a few occasionally might get upset when this is mentioned, but that's because it's a new way of looking at an exploitation that is incredibly unjust and is the cause of great violence. And we've been so indoctrinated to accept this great violence that when somebody brings it to our attention that this is not okay and that this is participating in tremendous violence, it can sometimes upset a few people because the cognitive dissonance of once upon a time thinking this is just totally fine, and then somebody saying that no, this has to end because it's animal slavery, it's 21st century legal slavery, and it's torturing and killing 1 trillion land and aquatic animals every year. And all that means, it's terrible, and it's totally unnecessary. We don't need animal products to survive. We can easily meet all our nutrition requirements from plants and other non-animal sources. And a plant-based diet is absolutely delicious. And there's also heaps and heaps of vegan alternatives for clothes and shoes. And I encourage people to buy secondhand items if you can. So anyway, there's all of this, and and I invite people to watch Cowspiracy, the sustainability secret, and also the documentary What the Health, which you can find sometimes on Netflix, but I'm sure they'll be online free that you can watch too. So that's really all I wanted to say, and please check out howtogovegan.org. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Till next time, bye for now.